And welcome to this February episode of Live from the Leon's Den. My name is Cesar Rincon, and I am here today with attorney Carlos Leon. How are you doing,
Very good,
Carlos?
Cesar. How are you, sir?
Fantastic. Welcome to 2020. It's our first live show for the year, and super excited to have you back on the show. For our viewers who are watching for the first time, if you could please, let our viewers know a little bit about your background, what your law firm does.
Absolutely. So we've been doing it for 25 years. I've been on my own for over 15 years now. And what we handle mostly is personal injury, catastrophic injury, wrongful death, serious injury accidents. It could be, automobile 18-wheeler accidents. It could be on-the-job accidents. It can be premises liability accidents. Pretty much if you've been injured and there's a negligent party on the other side of that, we look at those cases and see if we can help you with them. We've been doing it for a long time. We have a wonderful staff. We have two additional associate attorneys that work for me. We know what we're doing, and we make sure that at the end of the day, Caesar, we get you the compensation that you deserve.
Well, Carlos, and let's talk a little bit about 18-wheeler accidents. Just yesterday, I went to New Orleans for the weekend with my wife. Our daughter goes to school there. We drove up and down, and you see all these 18-wheelers just like, and you're like, it's dangerous. Tell us a little bit about what happens typically when there's an 18-wheeler accident, fatality, and those kind of things.
Right. So it's really a specialty. You've got a lot of car wreck lawyers or just general PI lawyers that say, yeah, we do 18-wheeler cases. But a lot of those guys will send them out to lawyers like me. A lot of those lawyers don't have the resources to be able to properly work up an 18-wheeler accident case. And the reason is to properly work that case up, besides making sure that your client is getting the adequate care he needs and that you're getting the information from those providers so that you can properly present the damage model, you also have to know how to go after these guys. There's a lot of federal regulations that apply in 18-wheeler cases. For example, they don't have to keep any of their documentation, their logs, their inspection reports beyond 6 months. So you have some lawyers that get involved, they wait around, then they ask for all this information. And you can imagine what happens on 6 months plus 1 day when an 18-wheeler carrier knows that they're about to be sued. Those documents vanish. And then you don't have the documents and you don't have the proof that you need. You can't make the case that you need in order to properly go after them. And like I said, get the compensation that family or that those loved ones need.
Yes, and so Carlos, that's amazing because even though everybody can be an 18-wheeler lawyer, not everybody has the resources, the expertise, and that's what people take for granted. They think all lawyers are created equal. But let's switch gears a little bit and talk a little bit about on-the-job injuries. Construction, we're very blessed to be in a state that is booming. I mean, everywhere we go,
Correct.
from north, south, east, west, anywhere you go in Texas, cranes are going all over the place. There's a ton of construction, road work, buildings going up, all kinds of expansion going on. Tell us a little bit about on-the-job injuries and how we can potentially help workers who've been injured through somebody else's negligence.
Yeah, so that's something we handle a lot of here at the Léon Law Firm. And as you know, Caesar, we do cases all over the state and sometimes all over the country. We just resolved a case for an injured worker in Florida. He was a resident of Houston but was doing work in Florida and fell off a roof during construction site work, and we helped him out, and we just had a good resolution for him and his family. So back to the on-the-job. So the on-the-job issue is a multitude of issues because, and you say construction, but it can be, as you mentioned, road work. We have a lot of road work going on. There's people that are working for these companies, these road construction companies, that they don't use the proper safety measures. They don't have the right traffic control plan, and their workers are walking around 5 feet from people going 80 miles an hour down the freeway. Mm-hmm. And so those are all things that we handle. It's called, there's multi-employer work sites. So if you have an on-the-job injury, you got to find a lawyer like us, a law firm like us. It's got years of experience. We know the type of experts to hire for the liability portion of the case so that we look at their traffic control plan. We know how to look and see if there's OSHA violations. We know how to look and see the layers of employers, who to go after, who was responsible for what. And so those are things that a lot of lawyers don't know how to do. And the reason that's important is because instead of going after one negligent party, you may be going after 4 negligent parties. And so you've got to dig into that. And not a lot of lawyers know how to do that, but we know how to do that here at the Léon Law Firm.
Oh, Carlos, and so another area that kind of segues with construction is the rights of undocumented workers. undocumented workers are out there taking whatever pay they can, trying to do whatever they can do, and unfortunately, a lot of times, if they're injured, work the employers try to just brush it off or just kind of set it to the side and say you don't have any rights or things like that. Tell us a little bit about what
Right.
rights they do or don't have.
Right. And now, in our current day and age, with our current administration, the undocumented worker subject is very touchy. And I'll be very candid with you. If you're in this country, undocumented, documented, whatever, you're protected by the Constitution. You have rights. And so if you're hired by someone and you're getting paid by that person and you're doing your work so that you can afford to buy food for your family, and you're injured because of somebody's negligence, you have rights. And we take those cases just as if you were documented. And the reason we do that is because you got a right. You have a right to fight for yourself if you're injured due to somebody's negligence. And so to touch on that very briefly, yeah, if you're undocumented and you've been wronged by a negligent party, you're at work, you're doing your job, you're getting paid weekly to do that job, and something happens as a result of someone else's negligence, then yeah, come to us. We'll take a look at it, and you have rights.
Yeah, and I might add, Carlos, this also applies to auto accidents.
Absolutely. And it's a good point because sometimes people don't even come to us because they have a horrendous auto accident and they're scared to death. Is ICE going to show up at my door? And, I can't tell you what ICE is going to do, but I can tell you that that's not the norm. If you're here working and you've got a history of working and, pay your taxes and you do what everybody else is doing with the exception of not being documented at the time, you have rights and you should assert them because you probably, if you're injured seriously enough for us to look at the case, you're not working anymore. You can't pay your bills. And so go ahead and stand up for those rights that you have, and we can help you with that.
All right, Carlos. So now let's talk a little bit about, a couple years ago, I guess, almost 2 years. Well, it's been 2 years.
Yeah.
Been over 2 years now since Harvey.
Right.
And of course, thankfully, most of the storm or the damage of the storm has been taken care of. But of course, there is the inverse condemnation lawsuit against the government. Tell us a little bit about what's going on with that.
Right. And so basically with the inverse condemnation, the lawsuits were filed and there was a multitude of lawyers that jumped in, and we actually jumped in with Williams Hart, and our cases were grouped with theirs. And the reason I've known John Eddie Williams is a fantastic man and a great lawyer. I've known him for over 25 years since I started practicing. Our firm is together with their firm, together with other firms, and Army Easterby, who's one of the guys leading the charge, has done a fantastic job. Our liability phase ended up really well for the upstream clients that we have. They're still doing the downstream, and that hasn't been decided. But now it's going to start moving, we believe, in this year into them picking some cases to try, some bellwether cases where the damages are going to be assessed. My point is progress is being made. So if you are an inverse condemnation client of ours or of anybody's, understand that the process is going to be slow and tedious. But I think there's going to be good results. And so just kind of hang in there. And it's not too late. You're talking about the time frame because of the lawsuit and because I think the government wants to be able to wrap their hands around any potential claims. It's not too late. We actually just picked up a mud district that contacted one of our lawyers, and we're going to represent them as well.
Okay, excellent. Now, Friday, January 24th, boom, 4 a.m, my wife jumps out of bed, says, "What was that?" I was sound asleep. I didn't hear it. But, 2-3 miles from my house was the Watson grinding explosion. Can you tell us a little bit about, what's going on with that situation?
Yeah, I can. And so when it happened, as you knew, and I knew shortly after, it was pretty catastrophic in nature. It was quite a blast that affected hundreds of homeowners. We actually represent a few of them, and we're in the process of signing up those clients who were contacting us. If you've been watching the news on that subject, you just found out they recently filed for bankruptcy, which is, of course, not good. My understanding is it's a family-run business, and this may have been their only out. That does not mean you should abandon all your claims. If they truly filed bankruptcy, as has been reported, there'll be a process established at the bankruptcy court by which you can submit your claims. I can tell you, though, I'm informing you that because I think you need to know. If you're one of those affected individuals, you need to probably get counsel right away and get in line, so to speak, if in fact they have filed a bankruptcy. I have not seen the bankruptcy pleading, but it'll probably be a public record soon, and I'm assuming that if you're one of the ones affected, they'll be reaching out to you as well to let you know your claims need to go through the bankruptcy court. It's an unfortunate situation, but it's a common situation when you have kind of although it looked like a big factory or a big processing manufacturing plant, it's a family-run business.
Okay. Now, Carlos, you've been a hard man to get hold of. You've been all over the state, traveling, working for your clients. Tell us a little bit about what's going on outside of the Houston area.
You're right. So most of you guys know I have a pretty big docket in El Paso. We do a lot of 18-wheeler cases, a lot of construction site cases, road construction cases in El Paso. We've also got work in Midland, and the oil and gas business is booming in Midland, the Midland-Odessa area, where we represent some oil field explosions. We're working on a case right now where a gentleman was standing by a processing plant where they were cleaning out the pipes with what they call pigs, like just balls, where they run them through the pipes. One of them blew out, exploded, injured him and some of his fellow workers, and we're working on that. Midland, Odessa is another place where if you go to Midland, Odessa, it's like you're at an 18-wheeler racetrack because there's so many 18-wheelers working in the industry, and they're working with inexperienced drivers because the business is just booming. So we take business there. We've got cases in the valley. We represent a family that's some folks that come down from Iowa. I think a lot of them refer them to snowbirds. They come down in the winter to get away from the cold, and they bring their RVs and whatnot to the valley. And one of those folks was injured by an individual who was carelessly driving and ran them over at their trailer park or at the RV park. So we were contacted by them, and we represent them. So we go where the case is if the case merits our participation. But yes, I'm going everywhere. Wherever I need to go, I go if it's a case where I think I can help the client.
Excellent, Carlos. Well, and then now that spring is upon us, a couple important things have happened in the sports world. We always wrap it up with the sports world. I'm just going to kind of throw it out there. Last week we had the Super Bowl.
True.
Your take?
The right team won. I mean, now the Texans can at least say we lost to the Super Bowl champs.
Right.
So no, I was glad to see. I'm a Patrick Mahomes fan, and I think he's a great guy and a good quarterback, and their coach Andy Reid is a good guy. So I was very pleased with. If my team, the Texans, couldn't do it, at least the guys that beat us did it.
Excellent. And then going into spring training, I think pitchers and catchers report in about a week or so.
That's right.
Maybe less. Not to talk about the controversy that's the past is in the past. How do you feel about the new hires, Dusty Baker and the pitching staff?
Yeah, I like Dusty. Dusty's, I think, one of the old school guys, and I think this team really, I think you and I can manage this team. They're so darn good. Right. But I think Dusty's a good person to lead this sort of team and to make sure that the thing keeps moving the way it is. It's a great machine that's been built, and I'm a fan. We're still 2017 champs in my book, and I think this team will show that this is maybe what they did was not correct, if as reported was true, but I think they're going to show they're a pretty solid team.
Excellent.
Okay.
All right, Carlos. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you have a super busy schedule, and we will do this in about a month or so.
Sounds good.
All right,
if you know Spanish, tune in to the Spanish one. We're going to go Spanish live, Facebook Live here in a minute.
Absolutely.